Summer 2024, Minyuan Square. A reunion that spans a century is about to take place. At the Tianjin Sports Museum, a permanent exhibition opened as a glittering part of a global celebration. The protagonist is an extraordinary figure who transcends both time and borders.
1个多世纪以来，最值得去纪念和学习的一位奥运冠军，最打动人的应该是他在获得奥运冠军之后，来到中国，来到天津。
We think of him as a Scottish legend, a Scottish icon, and we call him the Flying Scotsman.
He conquered the world with speed, traveled across continents, and forged a legend. He's Eric Liddell, known in Chinese as Li Airui. At the beginning of the 20th century, the world orchestrated a prelude to upheaval and reconstruction. China, an ancient civilization with a history spanning thousands of years, was stumbling at the crossroads between the dusk of imperialism and the dawn of modernization. It was a time when the old and the new clashed, and East and West civilizations collided. Tianjin was a frontier where the two worlds intersected. At 6 a.m. on January 16, 1902, a loud cry announced the arrival of the Reverend James Liddell's second son at a hospital in the concession of Tianjin. The baby, born in the morning sun, was Eric Liddell, future Olympic legend.
My grandfather went to China as a missionary, and his wife joined him 1 year later. Their eldest son, Rob, was born in Shanghai. My grandfather was sent to Mongolia to do the missionary and then spent the rest of their time in Tianjin. And that's where Eric was born, and then my aunt, Auntie Jenny, and then my father, Ernest, he was born there as well.
In 1907, at the age of 5, Eric Liddell traveled with his parents to the United Kingdom for the first time. By tradition, he and his older brother, Robert, were enrolled at a missionary school in London, a school now known as Eltham College.
This is our school registration book that every time a boy joined the school, everything was entered in this book. And here we have when the two little boys arrived, Robert Victor Liddell, born in 1900, and Eric Henry Liddell, born in 1902. They would get up probably quite early as they have a fairly meagre breakfast. Sometimes they'd go for a run before lessons, but he really loved the sport. He did all the sports there were. He played cricket, rugby and athletics were of course his main sports.
An oak tree at the school entrance witnessed the growth of Eric Liddell for nearly 12 years. It was here that both he and his brother Robert showed their outstanding athletic talents.
They obviously had great natural talent for sport, and they were both fast, because Rob used to be able to beat Eric when he was at school. Well, my father was good at swimming and he was good at tennis because those were the sports they did in China. And I'm reasonably good. I mean, I was a physical education teacher. It was very much in our family.
In 1920, Eric Liddell followed in the footsteps of his old brother Robert and enrolled at the University of Edinburgh. It was during his time at the university that his athletic prowess fully came into bloom.
But it was really when he came to Edinburgh University in 1920 that his athletics career started to become important. His first year in athletics was 1921. At the time he was taking part in rugby as well. He competed in Scotland at the Scottish Universities Championships and won everything he entered for.
Craig Lockhart, once a hot spot for sports and competition at the University of Edinburgh. On May 28, 1921, it witnessed the debut of Eric Liddell at the Union Games as a newcomer who defeated the previous champion to win the 100-yard race. Liddell himself mentioned this race in a speech he delivered later on in Tianjin, expressing his regret at finishing second in the 220-yard race that afternoon. A record of that speech sparked the interests of Professor Yang Zhen, a researcher at Tianjin University of Sport, to delve deeper into the legendary life of Eric Liddell. Yang not only traced Liddell's footsteps in literature, she embarked on a journey to Scotland herself.
苏格兰是一个很神奇的地方，孕育了很多的体育的名人，这个高尔夫运动、冰壶运动啊，它的发源地都在苏格兰啊。李艾瑞的家乡马尔岛，一个盛产苏格兰花岗岩的地方，国际上所有的冰壶运动，它所用的那个标准的冰壶啊，都必须使用苏格兰的花岗岩。
We do enjoy sport. I think, Scotland has beautiful scenery as well outside, so if we can get outside and do sport when we're outside, then we love to do that as well.
While in Scotland, Professor Yang Zhen examined Liddell's records in track and field from 1921 to 1925 and discovered that he was almost never out of first or second place in major events. As an all-arounder, Liddell was unstoppable on the track. He excelled in the 100 and 220-yard races. He was almost unrivaled. In 1922, Liddell made his first attempt at the 400-yard at the University of Edinburgh Union Games. The result was a pleasant surprise. Around the same time, Paris celebrated a historic moment. It won the bid to host the 8th Summer Olympic Games. The 1924 Paris Olympiad witnessed many pioneering practices, including the introduction of the Olympic motto, faster, higher, stronger, which now resonates around the world. Liddell's outstanding performances on the track earned him an undisputed entrance ticket to the Games. The British Olympic Committee had high hopes and recommended him to compete in the 100-meter, 200-meter, and 400-meter events, with 100 meters seen as a favorite for gold. However, when the heat's schedule was revealed, a choice between faith and glory had to be made.
Leading up to the Olympic Games, his main event was going to be the 100 metres, and he found out that it was going to be held on a Sunday, and that was against his principles as a devout Christian, and so he had to reschedule his training, focus on the 400 metres instead, which he at that time had very little experience of.
像400米这样的，它强度大，它距离又是最长的短跑项目，所以从能量供应上，这个糖酵解功能会产生大量的乳酸。这个时候在跑动的过程当中，它又肌肉酸痛现象比较明显，它会供氧不足，心率又上升的又比较快。其实运动员非常的难受，所以为什么说400米有死亡之跑？
He wasn't really training until quite recent time for the 400. He was quite a little bit inexperienced in it, but he was picked for the 400, and I think the people on the Olympic Committee weren't very happy about the fact he'd said no, but they accepted it, and so his preparation had to change somewhat for the slightly longer race.
From 100 meter to 400 meter, the change in training focus posed a great challenge, especially on the top-class stage like the Olympics. In the winter of 1923, it was here that Eric Liddell began his grueling and intensive training in preparation for the Olympics.
Pavilion behind me was where he changed, and famously he used the clock on the pavilion to time the progress as he got faster and faster and was preparing himself for the Olympics. But we very much treasure the Eric Liddell heritage.
The 1924 Paris Olympiad opened on July the 5th, 1924. More than 3,000 athletes from 44 countries and regions around the world entered the Olympic Stadium of Columbus. In this very place, a young Chinese student, part of a work-study program in France, sacrificed his precious living expenses to witness an Olympic event. His homeland had yet to grace the Olympic stage. This determined youth was the 20-year-old Deng Xiaoping. Meanwhile, the formidable British contingent, with 247 athletes, sought to reign supreme on the medal table. Eric Liddell was Britain's hope for winning a gold medal in track and field. On July the 9th, he seized the bronze medal in the 200-meter final. The moment of truth came at 6:30 p.m. on July the 11th, when the 400-meter final saw a host of athletes on the track. Liddell had a disadvantage. He drew the outside lane.
四妹妹她有弯道，所以这个时候在跑动过程中呢，她需要身体的内倾，克服这个离心力。她恰好分在了最外道，她也不知道对手跑得怎么样，所以她上来她就全速的去冲。
The starting pistol sounds, and Eric Liddell pranced out from the outermost lane. With his chest out and looking upward, he sprinted at full speed in his trademark stance. He left his world-class rivals behind, one by one. The moment he had crossed the finish line, the stadium boiled over. Liddell conquered the track and broke the limit for human speed. At 47.6 seconds, he broke the world record and clinched the gold medal for 400 meter at the Paris Olympic Games.
His 400 metres performance at the Olympic Games was the best by a Scottish athlete until it was beaten in 1969. He also in that year won the bronze medal in the 200 metres at the Olympics. And you've got to go to 1996 and the famous American athlete Michael Johnson to find another athlete who actually won medals in both the 200 metres and the 400 metres.
Giving up the 100-meter race for his religious beliefs may seem like an regrettable choice. But this choice led to Liddell's extraordinary victory in the 400-meter event. It was not only a gold medal, it was an overturning of traditional ideas. In this historic race, Liddell adopted a unique running strategy. It was nearly a full sprint run with exaggerated arm movements. Both regarded as outrageous at the time, but it proved the vision of the talented runner.
Head would be flung back, the arms would flail, and it wasn't an orthodox style at all. It wasn't the most attractive to look at, but it worked for him.
实际上，我们现在强调，就任何一个项目的运动员，他的核心稳定性要非常的强。你上肢没有力量，你带不动下肢的这种摆动。李艾瑞呢，他确实是一个天才级的选手，这种前程后程的速度差异不大。 包括他这个整个的摆臂的动作，他其实都暗合了现在像400米这种跑法的这样一个技术要求，基本上是契合。
McEvan Hall, magnificent, classic, and romantic. The 1924 commencement of the University of Edinburgh took place here. On top of receiving a bachelor's degree in science, Liddell received a special honor presented by the Chancellor himself, a crown of laurels made of olive branches taken from the Royal Botanic Gardens by special permission, and a scroll written in Greek.
After his graduation in 1924, the Student, which is one of the oldest university student newspapers in the world, actually did a piece on Eric Liddell, and it's got a photograph of him as at his graduation. A lovely article that allows the students of the following year to understand that they had an Olympian here at the university.
When graduating, we often find ourselves at a crossroad. For Liddell, the year 1924 was not only a rewarding year in academics, but also a year in which he grasped an Olympic gold medal and rose to fame. Like the moment when the 100-meter schedule was revealed in Paris, Liddell was once again faced with a choice. Instead of enjoying the splendor under the spotlight, he chose to head to a city that needed him more, Tianjin, China.
Why did Eric go to China? And I said, well, because that was his home. His parents and all the rest of his family lived there. So that's why he would go to China. He could have gone on to be more famous in his later life for athletics because he could have continued the running, which he did in China, but it was at not in a high-profile way. But his job was not that. That was not what he had intended to do.
Liddell didn't quit running. He took on another track in life. In June 1925, after 14 long days, he reached Tianjin, a city he had been away for 18 years. China, then under the warlord-led Beiyang government, was experiencing profound internal conflicts and external pressures. Frequent military conflicts and power struggle kept the entire country in a constant turmoil, with no efforts to spare for modern sports competitions, let alone the Olympics. Nevertheless, there were those who fought to push China forward, and Zhang Boling, the headmaster of Nankai School, was one of them. In the 6th year after Liddell left China, Zhang raised the 3 Olympic questions to the Chinese people. In the same year that Liddell snatched the gold, Zhang founded the Chinese Sports Association, forerunner to the modern Chinese Olympic Committee. Zhang Boling became the first person to promote China's participation in the Olympic Games. Eric Liddell took up a teaching post at the Anglo-Chinese College, taught chemistry and physical education. While there, Liddell left an extremely deep impression on the students.
这个人非常的仁慈，很喜欢中国学生，这非常有爱心。他在领导那个学生啊，在各方面，田径了、足球了、篮球了，这些东西，他是非常教导这个学生，提倡体育。我们认为他是一位英雄。
他说：“人生在世，一定要有特长，生下来不容易，一定要对世界有所特长，有所贡献。”
At Anglo-Chinese College, Liddell resolved to leave the Olympic glory behind and devote himself to education. But sometimes, fate can bring unexpected rewards, often without any notice. Mingyuan Square, formerly known as Mingyuan Ground, was built in 1920. In 1925, its founder, the Tianjin British Municipal Council, was keenly aware of the impact and value that an Olympic champion can bring, and swiftly invited Liddell to take part in its renovation. The renovated stadium became one of the most comprehensive facilities in Asia at the time. It was on this remarkable site that Liddell once again competed with the world's best athletes in the 1929 International Games, securing the first spot in the 400-meter race. In this 1926 letter to a Scottish friend, Liddell describes the details of his life in Tianjin. Yang Zhen notes that here, Liddell mentions his Chinese name for the first time.
中间的这个“爱”字，他用的是蓝矮的“矮”，但是后来呢，他的名字中间的这个“矮”字呢，就慢慢的就变成了 这个爱心的爱字啊，很有意思啊，这是一个很有意思的细节。同时呢，这个爱字呢也更加彰显他对于中国的情感。
In March 1926, Zhang Bolin invited Eric Liddell to Nankai to demonstrate the basic skills of running and coach middle and long-distance races. Life trajectories of two outstanding figures intersected in Tianjin through modern sports. Sports, in a turbulent modern China, carried a meaning far beyond the competition itself.
他来到天津之后呢，也是一直致力于校园体育，而且辅导天津非常多的优秀的体育选手。他也培养了当时的这个三铁的运动员刘福英，还有我们非常熟悉的跳高运动员吴碧显。那么当时他也辅导了我们的足球队、篮球队、排球队，还有很多的，比如说棒球比如说田径，很多的体育项目。
Among his disciples, Wu Bixian represented China in the 11th Berlin Olympic Games in 1936. Eric Liddell's role in China cannot be summed up in any single capacity. He was a sower of sportsmanship and a practitioner of the spirit of love and sacrifice. Born in Tianjin and returned to Tianjin, the reign of his life was tightly bound to this land. On March 27, 1934, Eric Liddell married Canadian Florence Mackenzie in Tianjin.
This is an invitation to his wedding to Florence Jean Mackenzie in 1934. It's probably a very rare survival. So it says, Mr. and Mrs. Hugh Mackenzie request the pleasure of your company of the marriage of their daughter Florence Jean to Reverend Eric H. Liddell at the Union Church, Tientsin, on Tuesday, March the 27th, 1934 at 2 p.m.
The story goes that he only went home for tea on a Thursday, and my grandmother never realised why he only went home on a Thursday, and it was because Florence came to my Aunt Jenny for piano lessons on a Thursday, and so that's why he went back. But of course, but nobody was putting two and two together for a long time.
That sweetness of life was torn apart by war. In 1937, Japan launched a full-scale invasion of China. Liddell sent his pregnant wife and two young daughters on the ship bound for Canada, while he himself made a choice once again to stay in China and share hardships with this land. In March 1943, the Japanese army imprisoned more than 20 expats from Tianjin at a concentration camp in Weixian County, Shandong Province. Liddell was among them. This one-of-a-kind chemistry textbook was written by Liddell in the camp. He was assigned as a science teacher and was responsible for organizing sporting events.
And one Sunday, the kids wanted to play, and he said, sorry, I can't referee you, you shouldn't be playing on a Sunday. The game broke out into a fight without him there. So the next week, they played again on Sunday, and very quietly, he arrived, he refereed the game. So in that situation, he showed that in appropriate circumstances, even he, and it wasn't for himself, it was for others.
In 1944, British Prime Minister Winston Churchill made a prisoner of war exchange agreement with Japan, and Liddell's name was the first on the list. However, he handed the opportunity to others. On February 21, 1945, long and tough living conditions and untreated brain tumor took the life of the Olympic champion, who once sprinted with so much vitality on the track. At the age of only 43, Eric Liddell ran his last race in life in his beloved country, China.
He loved running, but it was just so sad that he was so young. And also the fact that it was so near the end of the war before February 45. I know, of course, we're very proud of him. You know, I mean, it's lovely to think that you have somebody in your family who was such a special person, basically.
Eric was greatly loved, I think, by the Chinese because of the help that he gave the Chinese at a time of terrible oppression from the Japanese. It was awful, really. And he himself was endangered frequently. So that is something that perhaps warms the hearts of Chinese people.
In 1991, a monument made with granite from Liddell's hometown, Isle of Mull, was set up in the former Weixian internment camp. As if history had awarded this outstanding runner an eternal medal of gold.
奥林匹克精神是和平、团结、互助和友爱，它的内涵是非常深刻的。我想，奥林匹克精神和体育精神绝不仅仅在赛场上，就像李艾瑞的他的书籍中写到的，我们可能都是在不同的赛道上，但是我们可以跑出不同的人生。
对他了解的越多，越发现呢，他不仅是一位运动员啊，他更是一位有着大爱的一个很伟大的人。他是跨越国界、跨越宗教、跨越种族，甚至是跨越时空的一个精神符号。
Eric Liddell may be gone, but his influence will not diminish. In Scotland, in Paris, and in Tianjin, wherever his footsteps have been, and even places he's not been, Eric Liddell is an immortal star whose luster is renewed with each retrospective and retelling. The Beijing Olympic Games opened in 2008. As put forward by then IOC President Jacques Rogge, these first ever games in Beijing will thus respond to the vision of a man, Zhang Boling, who, a century ago, expressed his dream of seeing his home country and being part of the Olympic movement. In the new era of China's reform and opening up, Deng Xiaoping, who had watched the Paris Olympics a century earlier, was the first leader to propose hosting the Olympics. All achievements of human civilization are worthy of appreciation and sharing by all humanity. Today, Tianjin sends around 20 athletes to the global event. From 1924 to 2024, a century later, the Olympic flame in Paris is lit once again, and new legends are about to be born. The flash on the track 100 years ago continues to inspire every dream chaser. He ran for a lifetime and reaped the highest honor. Not only a crown on a podium, but also the medal of the heart.